dimension big. Yeah. Let's get into it, guys. So we'll start with the set-aside prayer, as we always do. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, and about the 12 steps. And please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. And as this is the fourth dimension big book study, it's a tradition here that we read the two parts of the book that describe the fourth dimension. The first would be on page 8, where Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, which is probably my favorite page in the book, if I had to pick one, Bill Wilson writes, we have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. We are going to be catapulted. We are going to be rocketed into the fourth dimension. And I'm so glad you guys are here with me to do it. And now, as tradition would dictate, everyone online, please put one hand up like this. Everybody put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh, yeah. 2 weeks. I was going through withdrawal from that, man. It's been like 2 weeks. 2 weeks since I've seen that. Wonderful to be here, guys. And tonight we're gonna well, let's recap. First of all, let's recap. Hey-o. Okay, we'll recap a little bit of what we've gone over the last few weeks. Can you guys see, if I stand up here, can you guys see the whiteboard behind me? If you guys pin the old Zoom screen, can you see here what we're talking about? Can you see problem, solution, the program of action? Thumbs up if you can see, and if you can't see, that's okay. I might need to adjust the light a little bit.
Yeah, Kevin. I can't see it at all. It's really
you have your
fuzzy.
You have your blur the background turned on.
Oh, there you go. That's better.
Can you see that better? Can you see it now? It's a little bit brighter.
That's beautiful. It's okay for me.
Okay.
How about other people?
Try to illuminate. Okay, so we talked about the problem, the solution, and the program of action. There's 3 things that every alcoholic my type needs to know in order to achieve recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. I need to know what the problem is. I need to know what my solution is, and I need a program of action. I would say most importantly, I need to understand what the program of action is. I need to do the program of action. Okay, as I always like to say, I believe the most important word in all of Alcoholics Anonymous is the word do. You know, I was just talking to one of my sponsees about this earlier today. You know, he fell short on a commitment because if he was feeling a lot of self-pity and decided not to do something that he said he was going to do. And you know, my sponsor tells me, man, there is spiritual surrender and just following directions. And thank God that Alcoholics Anonymous has just trained the most important part of my body, man. Alcoholics Anonymous has trained my feet so that no matter what my head is lying to me about or how my heart is feeling, my feet just get me to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. My feet just get me doing what I've been told to do in AA. You know, anybody here ever heard the saying, like, just do the next right thing in AA? I've already heard that, like, just stay sober and do the next right thing. Like, what the? I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. What do I know about next right things? I don't know about next right things. What I do know is that I just need to take the next direction that Alcoholics Anonymous is asking me to take, period. Okay? If I'm just taking the next direction that AA is asking me to take, things go very well. Okay? And that is surely our program of action. Program of action to achieve this solution to overcome the problem. Well, we learned what the problem is. What's our problem? Problem is the grave nature of alcoholism. I have a physical allergy to alcohol coupled with a mental obsession. Okay, mental obsession that will compel me to always go and pick up another drink after some period of sobriety. And a physical allergy manifests itself in a phenomenon of craving that will ensure that I destroy myself in the process. When I'm sober, I can't stop myself from picking up the first drink. And once I pick up the first drink, I can't stop myself from destroying myself with alcohol. Physical, allergy, mental obsession. We got that from Dr. Silkworth. 2 weeks ago, we read in the doctor's opinion. Okay, we read all about the cycle of alcoholism. Okay, and we went through that cycle. We went through that cycle together, and we learned about that cycle, and we learned how do we apply that process. I'll take us through that very quickly in a moment. Then I needed to understand what our solution is. Okay, the solution in Alcoholics Anonymous, as opposed to many other different types of treatment modalities, is singular in Alcoholics Anonymous. It is one thing. And that is a spiritual awakening as a result of the 12 steps, period. And nothing else. That is what our solution is in AA. Okay? If I wanted to summarize Alcoholics Anonymous quite succinctly, it would simply be that God conquers alcoholism, period. That is it. God conquers alcoholism, and we have a program of action that I can do. Do. Again, the most important word in AA is the word do. My problem is not that I don't know things. My problem is that I don't do things. Okay? I can do this program of action to achieve that solution. Okay? And God, it's God that restores us to sanity. It's God that helps me to understand and see the curious mental blank spot, the insane mental twist that precedes the first drink. I am an alcoholic who today is currently not drinking. Why? Why is that? Because I have found in Alcoholics Anonymous what I was always looking for when I was drinking. I have found in AA what I was looking for in that bottle. Every time I took that drink, every time I attempted the desperate experiment of taking another drink, what was I looking for? Relief, and I was looking for ease and comfort. What I have found in AA, through the application of these 12 steps to achieve that solution, I have found a way to be easy and comfortable, sober. In the past, I had one of two choices. I was either sober and insane and crawling out of my skin, ready to kill myself and ready to kill you, or I could go take a drink. Those are the only alternatives I had. Alcoholics Anonymous has given me another alternative, and that's a way to feel peace in sobriety at the same time. It's amazing, okay? So I need to know what that solution is. That solution is a vital spiritual experience, and then the program of action is clearly, of course, our 12 steps. We learned about the Oxford group. We learned about how we could get those the steps in Alcoholics Anonymous extrapolated from the Oxford group, okay? Which was really, the Oxford group was a group of, you know, upper middle class people, Christian people, okay? Don't flip out, okay? We're non-denominational in AA. Don't log off just yet. Stay with me, okay? The fact is that we came from a Christian denomination that just had actions. Simple, okay? We don't have to believe what they believed, but I do have to do what they indicated, okay? And in the simplest form, man, the 12 steps broken down are simply surrender, confession, restitution, and service. That's it. If you want a little primer on what the Oxford group gave us, go to page 263 in your book. Go check it out and read the first original 6 steps of the Oxford group. It's simple, guys. Surrender, confession, restitution, service. Anyone who will do, again, capital D, capital O, who will do those things will have a deeper experience of God. If I have a deeper experience of God, I can overcome this spiritual sickness that creates the insane thought that compels me to pick up a drink again and destroy myself, okay? Alcoholics Anonymous has given me actions to connect me to a solution that has removed my necessity to drink alcohol. In the past, I had to drink. I had to. It was commit suicide, go into psychosis, or pick up a drink. Today, we have a much better solution in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, why am I recapping all of this? Why am I going through all this? Because tonight, we are going to read a story of the first man who ever had access to all 3 pieces of this information. We're going to read the story of our co-founder, Bill Wilson. We're going to read a story called Bill's Story, okay? And the only thing that's really unique or special about Bill Wilson is that he was the first person in the history of the world to have access to all 3 pieces of this information. Bill learned from Dr. Silkworth what the problem is. Okay, and tonight we're gonna read that magical moment absolutely magical spiritual moment when Ebby Thatcher, an old school friend of his who had discovered the solution through the Oxford group, comes and gives him this program of action and this solution. And in that moment, Bill Wilson becomes the first person to achieve all and to receive rather all three pieces of this information. And in that moment, the seeds for Alcoholics Anonymous were planted in that moment. They didn't sprout yet. They didn't germinate until June 10th, 1935, but the seeds were planted that day. It's an absolutely magical moment. It's one of the most important moments of my life, and it happened long before I was ever born, okay? So with that said, guys, I want to review one last, not last thing, but one other thing. I want to talk just quickly about the cycle of alcoholism, okay? And I just want to get everyone aligned on that. And really, guys, I'm just going through this again because I've been away for a couple of weeks, and I just want to set the stage, kind of set some context, okay? You guys with me on that? I just want to remind us kind of where we're at, and then I promise we'll start moving forward again. So give me just 1 minute. I'm just gonna open this up. Something that will look very familiar to all of my sponsees that are online right now. Can you guys see this? Thumbs up if you can see what I'm sharing right now. This is the cycle of alcoholism. Okay, it was outlined by Dr. Silkworth in the chapter The Doctor's Opinion that we read a couple of weeks ago. Page XXVIII, super key, super important to remember that, guys, okay? Rob is furiously tapping it in. I can see he was going to take a drink of coffee, but now he's tapping it in for us. XXVIII, okay, in The Doctor's Opinion. That's Roman numeral 28. I didn't know that before I came to AA, but I had to learn my Roman numerals. Okay, so Dr. Silkworth talks about this, and Brad, my man Brad is online. Speaking of traveling, Brad just got back from New Zealand. Quite lovely to have you home, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I thought I was well adjusted to the time, and I thought I slept all night last night, and I woke up at 1 a.m., so I'm doing good.
Yeah, jet lag. Jet lag is a real thing. It really is. Brad, would you be kind enough as our reader tonight? And I'm so happy to have you back in the fold, man. Would you please read for us the cycle out of The Doctor's Opinion? And what I want you guys to do is be mindful, listen to what Brad is reading, okay? And then see where we are on the cycle. I want you to watch the cycle, look at the cycle, and listen to what Brad is reading.
Awesome. Hey, everybody, I'm Brad, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Brad.
Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that, while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented, unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks, drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery.
All right, beautiful. Thank you for reading that, Brad. So this is in my sponsorship lineage and at my home group, this is so important, such a key part of at my home group. We have this up on the wall. Okay, we've actually created a poster for this. My friend Paige created a poster for this, and we have it up on the wall. And it really started out of this big book study. Years ago, we kind of took that out and drew out this cycle, and now it's become a fundamental part of our meeting. So we've got the 12 steps, we've got the 12 traditions, and then we got Dr. Silkworth's cycle up on the wall so that we can refer to it while we're sharing, actually, okay? So there's two reasons that we use this cycle. And this is the doctor's symptomology, the pathology for the disease of alcoholism, according to Dr. William D. Silkworth, okay? 1939, when the book was written, April 10th, 1939, the book is published, and this is what Dr. Silkworth laid out for us as his estimation of what the problem is, okay? And what do doctors do? We go in with a certain set of symptoms. Doctor says, okay, well, those symptoms align with this disease, and I diagnose you with this. So it's, I diagnose you with diabetes, or I diagnose you with gout, or I diagnose you with, you know, you name it, whatever the disease is, okay? Well, Dr. Silkworth isn't here to diagnose us. We have to do it ourselves. The way that I do this with my sponsees is when I start working with a sponsee, I will have him come up with 5, and there's women on here too. I don't personally sponsor women at this time in my life, but this will work for women too. So any man or woman can, in questioning whether or not they have this disease, I take this cycle, okay? And we start, typically we'll start at firm resolution, okay? A time in my life where I swore off. I said, either I'm going to learn to control my drinking, or I'm going to slow it down, or I'm going to stop drinking hard alcohol, or, you know, a big one for a lot of people is, well, I'm a drug addict, but I'm not an alcoholic, so I can still drink, but I'm going to control my drugs, or vice versa. Because I would try that for a while, and then I would get body slammed by alcohol, and then I would change my mind and thinking, no, okay, clearly I'm an alcoholic, but maybe I'm not a drug addict, so I can still do dope. Okay, whatever it is, slowing down, okay, or my attempt to control, okay, or my absolute, you know, we call it the alcoholic national anthem. I know you guys know it. Everyone on this call is saying it before. I'm never gonna drink again. The alcoholic national anthem, the firm resolution. What I'm interested in to know, okay, when did that happen? How did that happen? Why did that happen? And then during this period of sobriety, what happened? When I became spiritually sick, we call it the spiritual malady. The spiritual malady. Malady is a fancy French word. It just means sick. The spiritual sickness. Dr. Silkworth calls it restless, irritable, and discontent. In the chapter Vision for You in our book, it describes the hideous 4 horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Okay, I know those. I rode those ponies for a long time, brothers and sisters, believe me. I know all about this spiritual sickness. But let me ask you this question. Am I restless, irritable, and discontent when I'm sober? Or am I restless and irritable and discontent when I'm drunk? Sober. We all know that. I've asked that question with hundreds of alcoholics. Not a single one of them has ever gotten it wrong. But if I were to ask that same alcoholic, what is your problem? They would never say to me, well, my problem is, Kevin, I keep getting sober and I become restless, irritable, and discontent. No, they tell me their problem is vodka. They tell me their problem is Jack Daniels. They tell me their problem is crystal meth. Okay, it looks like a vodka problem. It looks like a Jack Daniels problem. It looks like an alcohol problem. It looks like a drinking problem, doesn't it? And the reality is, what I have discovered, and what I had discovered, was a drinking solution to a restlessness, irritability, and discontent problem. I believe that alcoholism is a disease that begins when I stop drinking. And the end result of the disease of alcoholism is me picking up a drink. And I pick up that drink after I have an insane thought. Mental obsession, the insanity of alcoholism. Dr. Silkworth says we are unable to distinguish the true from the false, okay? We cannot, true things look false to me and false things look true to me. Okay. And the insanity of alcoholism is the insane thought that I have that precedes the first drink. We're going to see this happen in Bill Wilson tonight when we read through Bill's story. Okay. We're going to see it. And every time we see it, we're going to indicate it. We're going to make a note. We're going to stop and point out how this cycle happens to Bill Wilson at least 3 times in his story. Then, of course, we pick up that first drink. Why? Because I got to get relief from this restlessness, irritability, and discontent. And the reality is the effect of alcohol as a means of coping with this restlessness, irritability, and discontent is so positive. It works so extremely well that eventually it warps my mind into an inability to distinguish the true from the false. It becomes a defective coping mechanism. It becomes a defective thought pattern. And it becomes a subtle form of insanity. This is alcoholic insanity. The insanity of alcoholism, guys, is not the crazy things I did when I was drinking. That's not the insanity of alcoholism, not in the way our book describes it. That's the spree. The insanity of alcoholism is that although I have sworn off, I will never drink again, and I am physically sober as I am right now, I don't have a drink, I have a thought. I have an insane thought that will lie to me. Kevin is trying to kill Kevin, guys. Okay? I was talking to a sponsee about this earlier today. I needed to stop listening to Kevin. Kevin is no good for Kevin. All right? Kevin is trying to kill Kevin. Okay? And Kevin was almost successful. Okay? And Kevin will lie to me and tell me that this time it's going to be okay. This time it's going to be different. This time I'm going to have just 6 drinks. This time I'm going to drink like a gentleman. This time I'm going to get away with it. Hey, I'll go back to AA tomorrow. What's the big deal? Okay. What's one more going to hurt? Who cares? Okay. What's the use? And then I pick up that drink and I'm gone, man. That physicality takes over. I take the drink. Drink takes a drink and the drink takes me, brothers and sisters, and I'm gone. Okay. For me to start drinking is like me to choose to start having sex with a gorilla, man. It ain't over until the gorilla says it's over. Okay. That's the way it is, man. That's just the way it is. And I entered the well-known stages of a spree. Spree's got me. I don't got it, man. I'm on a runaway train and I do not know when I'm going to get off. Could be 4 hours, could be 4 days. I went out drinking one night for 3 years. Okay. That's the way it goes, man. It's got me. I don't have it. And we emerge remorseful, hell's bells, and I'll never do it again. So the way that I work with my sponsees, we start here, a time that I swore off, firm resolution. I want to know, what were you feeling during the period of sobriety? Okay. What was the feeling? What were the emotions? What was the thinking during this time period where you became sober? Okay. And invariably it's like, yeah, I started to get a little crazy, started to get resentful, started to get filled with fear, started to feel guilt and shame, started to hate myself for what I had done the last time I drank, so on and so forth. Until one point, I was just doing this with a sponsee last night. Okay. Last night, talking to him, he's in Fort McLeod detox right now. Okay. Talking to him about, and this is a guy who's been around AA for 30 years, man. Okay. And a few weeks ago, he succumbed to the desire again. He believed the insane thought, and the thought was, what is one going to hurt? What will one hurt? And this is after 30 years in our deal, man. He took that one, and now he showed up at Primary Purpose Group last Wednesday. This is a guy who was like on corporate jets at TELUS. Corporate jets in a big telco company that some of you will know. He's living out of a suitcase, homeless at PPG, man. And I love him. I couldn't love him more. I'm so happy he's back. I'm so happy he's okay. And but that was his thought. We had to pinpoint. I want to pinpoint exactly what was the insane thought that I had. Okay. And we're going to pinpoint with Bill Wilson tonight. What is the insane thought that Bill has preceding him picking up a drink? And guys, look, the scariest thing, I was joking about Kevin wants to kill Kevin. The scariest thing, this should horrify everyone on this call. If I have alcoholism, the time will come in sobriety, stone cold, stark raving sober, that I will have a thought. I don't have a drink, man. I have a thought. And I'm as sober as I am right now. That tells me that alcohol is not my problem, man. My problem, the unmanageability of alcoholism that we talk about in step 1, brothers and sisters, the unmanageability of alcoholism is not the way that I drink. The unmanageability of alcoholism is the way that I think and the way that I feel. And the way that I think and the way that I feel with untreated alcoholism will always take me back to having a drink, okay? So what I do with my sponsees, I want them to come up with 5 stories from their own life that match this cycle. 5 times that they swore off, became restless, irritable, and discontent, had an insane thought, picked up the first drink, triggered the allergy, entered the spree, emerging remorseful, the firm resolution not to drink again, okay? I'll give you an example. When I was I was probably 19 years old, I went to the Lander Treatment Center here in Alberta, affectionately known as Landerland. And I swore off, man. That's it. I'm done. I'm through forever. I'm 19 years old. I'm never going to drink again. 28 day treatment center. I came out of there. It was not a 12-step based treatment center. And I'm here to tell you, man, I did not feel a whole lot better when I left, but I had my nice, my nice little ceremony, my nice little graduation. They gave me my little marble, and I went up to the feelings chart and talked to everybody about how I was feeling, and, better living through volleyball and all that kind of treatment, all that kind of stuff. And I remember my mom came to pick me up, and as we were driving home, the insane thought that I had simultaneously, I was telling her how I'm never going to drink again, and treatment was so effective, Mom, and it's all good. I just need to borrow a little bit of money if you don't mind. And simultaneously, the thought going on in my mind is, I wonder what Luke is doing tonight. And what that meant to me is like my buddy, my partner, my running man, my toxic twin, whatever it is. I remember when I hooked up with Luke, I don't even think the car came to a full stop when my mom pulled up in front of our house. And I just took off. I remember I still had the bracelet on my wrist from the treatment center when I hooked up with Luke. And he said, do you think this is a good idea, Kevin? And why don't you just dumb me up and give me what I need, man? And that was it. And I was gone for 4 days. Okay. And when I had that thought, I wonder what Luke is doing, and I had that decision to go out and go again, I was as physically sober as I am now. So I ask each of my sponsees come up with 5 examples from your own life that match this cycle. Okay. And that's what we do. The other reason that I want to have those 5 stories, so I'm working with a newcomer, I can share that story and I can build identification right away. Okay. When properly armed with facts about myself, I can generally win the confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until this has been accomplished, little or nothing else can be done. Okay. So that is it, guys. That is the cycle. That is just a little bit of a quick review of where we've been and what we've been studying. Now, as I said, as promised, guys, we're going to go to page 1 in our book. Page 1, Bill's story, man. And I'm pumped. I'm very excited. And the first time I remember having a copy of this book in my hand, I was in a mental institution, really, a place called 5 North in Medicine Hat, Medicine Hat Regional Hospital, where I had been, I wasn't sentenced, but I was committed to the mental institution for an appreciable length of time. And they had a copy of this book, and I started reading this book, and I started on page 1. Okay, because I don't read prefaces and forewords and things like that, or Roman numerals. That stuff's for losers, man. Okay, when I'm going to start, I start on page 1. That's where I start. And I tried to start on this chapter. And I'll tell you what, brothers and sisters, I had no idea what this guy was talking about. None. I could not make heads or tails of this guy. And, when an alcoholic reads something they don't understand, we just get angry. And that's what happened to me. I got angry and I threw this book away, and I said, whatever AA is, I don't know. It's not for me. Maybe I'll go to some more of those meetings, but this book is stupid. Okay. And what I needed and what I was given, and part of what I think is my calling in life and my duty and my obligation to pay back to all the men and women that painstakingly spent hours of their life taking me through this book, line by line, word by word, explaining what this all meant, is the main purpose of this big book study. Is to help to fill in some of the blanks and fill in some of the gaps and explain some of the history of this stuff so that it makes sense to you, so that you can understand, so that I could understand how this New York law school stock speculator in Wall Street in 1934 had anything to do with me. I did not identify with this guy at all, I thought. As it turns out, okay, when it was explained to me, and when some of this different language and some of the history was explained to me, it turns out I identify with Bill Wilson 100%, and I hope that you will too. And so, just to remember, guys, we're going to take a look tonight. We're probably going to get to the point where Bill is starting to get in real trouble. We will probably get right to the point that he meets Ebby Thatcher, which will be at the on page 8. So we'll probably get through about 8 pages of this. What we're really going to see tonight is Bill Wilson in his cups, okay, which is a very antiquated term from the 1930s. Just means while he's drinking. We're going to see Bill Wilson at his worst, and what we really want to keep an eye on and really I try to identify is where and when is Bill falling into this cycle again, a period of sobriety, becoming restless, irritable, and discontent, and pinpoint exactly at which point is he having this insane thought that is telling him it will be a good idea to pick up a drink again. Okay? So let's get into it. Page 1, chapter 1, Bill's story. Let's do it. Brad, you ready to read for us?
I'm ready.
Rock and roll.
Chapter 1, Bill's story. War fever ran high in the New England town to which we knew young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned, and we were flattered when the first citizens took us to their houses, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last, and in the midst of the excitement, I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and the prejudices of my people concerning drink. In time, we sailed for over there. I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol.
Okay, so guys, let's take a look at that. First of all, what's he talking about? Now, he's talking about war fever. War fever ran high, okay? And this is something I want to point out. If any of you ever have an aspiration to, like, you know, speak at AA meetings and speak at conferences, okay, and to become like a real legit AA speaker, one of the things that I always tell my sponsees, if they're going to do that, figure out where you're going to start in your story. If you listen to a lot of big name AA speakers, and you know, I say that with all reverence and love, because a lot of them changed my life, man. They find unique places to start in their story. It doesn't always start with, I was born on a cold and stormy night. Okay, they will think about, you know, maybe they talk about they started on their first AA meeting, or they'll start their story when they took their first drink. I always start my story when I was 12 years old. I was not well. That every time I speak anywhere, that's how it starts. When I was 12 years old, I was not well. Okay, that's where I start. Where is Bill Wilson starting his story? He's not starting the day he was born. He's not starting as a child. He's starting his story at a time in his life, for whatever reason, that was very meaningful to him. He is going off to war. Okay, what war is he going off to? People almost always jump in and say World War II. Not the case. You got to think the book wasn't even published till 1939. What he's talking about is that he is going off to World War I. Okay, as a young man, as a young soldier. And you can imagine there was a lot of pride in that. Okay, and there was a lot of esteem. And so these young soldiers from Plattsburgh, what the heck is Plattsburgh? Plattsburgh is a city in New York. That's where they were from. Bill Wilson and a lot of the early characters in AA were all kind of from the eastern seaboard of the United States. Vermont, Connecticut, New York, New England, so on and so forth. And what he's saying is, that people, rather than putting them up in hotels or boot camps or whatever, people were inviting them into their homes because they were war heroes and they were going off to fight evil. And so he says here was moments of applause, intervals hilarious, so on and so forth. He says, I forgot the strong warnings and the prejudices of my people concerning drink. Bill Wilson's grandfather, Griffith Wilson, was a terrible drunk. And so people had warned him, Bill, you've got this kind of in your family. Even at that time, people knew that there was some genetic component to this. So his people warned him about drink. He said, in time, we sailed for over there. What does that mean? It means he went to Europe. That's what it means. He went from the United States over to Europe to go fight in World War I. And look at this, guys. Already in the first paragraph, I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. Already, we are seeing Bill Wilson using alcohol as a means of overcoming his spiritual malady. We're not even out of the first paragraph yet. You guys see that? All right, let's keep going.
We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is ne'er forgot, whether he dieth by musket or by pot.
Okay, so Winchester Cathedral is a very famous church in England, and it's kind of a tourist place that a lot of people would go. It makes sense that Bill Wilson would go there. What he's saying here is that he went out to an old tombstone, and there was a doggerel on a tombstone, which is just kind of like an epitaph or like a little limerick that they have on the tombstone. Okay. And what he's saying is, here lies a Hampshire Grenadier. It just means a soldier. Okay. Don't get confused with some of this wording. Here lies a soldier that drank himself to death. Okay. That's essentially what he's saying. That's, if you want to summarize that, that's what it means. Here's a soldier who drank himself to death. Okay. He didn't die heroically as a soldier. He didn't die in war. No, he drank alcohol and died. Okay. That's what he's saying. And Bill Wilson then says, ominous warning, which I failed to heed. Okay. So he's writing a kind of foreshadowing a little bit. Okay. And there is actually a conference. I can't remember the name of the conference. Maybe Rob or if anyone else on the call remembers the name of the conference. There's a conference every year at Winchester Cathedral, an AA conference. And my friend Fred, who actually speaks on the Big Book Compendium, was just there. And you can get your picture taken with the tombstone. It's still there. It's a real thing. Okay. So anyway, just some history about that. But you know, I would read this stuff and I have no idea what they were talking about. When they're talking about whether he dieth by musket or by pot, by the way, they're not talking about marijuana. He didn't smoke pot and overdose, okay? They're talking about potted beer, okay? So whether he dieth by musket in war or by pot is just potted beer. That's all they're referring to, okay? So 22 and a veteran of foreign wars. Back to you, Brad.
Ominous warnings which I failed to heed. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation? My talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the head of vast enterprises, which I would manage with the utmost assurance.
Okay, can we already see Bill Wilson's alcoholic ego in that last statement? Okay, one of my favorite ways of describing alcoholics is we are egomaniacs with inferiority complexes. Okay, and Bill Wilson often, I mean, doesn't that make sense? Okay, I mean, and that's how I am. Like, I'm afraid I'm not good enough, but I'm pretty sure I'm better than you. That's how I am. Okay. If you have ever simultaneously, raise your hand, if you have ever simultaneously been afraid that you were going to get fired at your job and also upset that they weren't promoting you and giving you a raise. Okay, that's me, man. Okay, that's alcoholism. And that's Bill Wilson here. Okay, so he's talking here about his talent for leadership placed me at the head of vast enterprises, which I would manage with the utmost assurance. Bill Wilson wrote very frequently about he would fall victim to, he called them power drives, these power drives to prove that he was better than other people. Okay, well, where would that come from other than a deep sense of I'm not good enough and a deep sense of inferiority? So we see that already in Bill Wilson's story here. Okay, back to you, Brad.
I took a night law course and obtained employment as investigator for a surety company. The drive for success was on. I'd proved to the world I was important. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceived their best projects when drunk, that the most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived.
You know, I was the same way when I was 14 years old, man. I wanted to be Jim Morrison. I wanted to be Kurt Cobain. I wanted to be, you know, and let's not talk about how those guys ended up, okay? But that's what I thought. I really thought the more that I drank, the more, you know, philosophical genius poet, you know, the little wounded poet I could be, and I'd be a genius, you know, musician. And you know, all I did was just destroy my life, as Bill Wilson is about to. So keep going, Brad. Thank you.
By the time I had completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that one day would turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. It went into certain securities, then cheap and rather unpopular.
Okay, so let's just pause there, Brad. So Bill Wilson right now is he's getting involved in the stock market in New York City. Okay, he's on Wall Street, and it's the first time that Wall Street is really starting to kick off. And like Bill says, a lot of people made money. Why not I? Okay, he says the maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. That's just a like a whirlpool or a vortex is like sucking him into Wall Street. And he says this alloy of drink and speculation. What's an alloy? An alloy is like steel, where they take iron and they take ore, or they take two types of metal and melt them together to make something much stronger. Okay. And so he's talking about this alloy of drinking and stock investing. Okay. You could analogize this today. Anybody here ever have anyone in their life that is a day trader? Anybody know any day traders out there? Okay, that's what Bill Wilson is doing. He's a day trader. Okay, anybody here invested in cryptocurrency? Okay, I can almost guarantee Bill Wilson would have been a crypto guru. Okay, if he were alive today. That's what he's doing. Okay, he's trying to find an easy way to live, talking fast to slow thinking people is what he's trying to do. He's trying to find a way to avoid work. Okay, really. And he's making all these investments, and it's going to boomerang on him and cut him into ribbons. He and his wife saved $1,000, and adjusted for inflation, $1,000 would be $14,000 today, just to give you an idea. And then he says it went into securities, which just means securities are, for anyone who doesn't know, securities are just stock. He's just investing in stock in certain companies and thinking he's going to make a little fortune. Okay, back to you, Brad.
I rightly imagined that they would someday have a great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements, but my wife and I decided to go anyway. I had developed a theory that most people lost money on stocks through ignorance of markets. I discovered many more reasons later on. We gave up our positions and off we roared on a motorcycle, the sidecar stuffed with tent, blankets, a change of clothes, and 3 huge volumes of a financial reference service. Our friends thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. Perhaps they were right.
Okay, I'm just going to pause there just to say, guys, at this point in the stock market, companies in New York really had no idea what was going on in all of the factories around, Ohio and Pittsburgh and so on. Okay, they really relied on reports that they were getting, but no one really knew what was going on out there. And Bill Wilson said to himself, "Hey, I've got an idea. I'm going to go out and I'm going to evaluate all these factories. I will write reports, and that's going to be my idea." And he couldn't get anyone to invest in this idea. I think it's partly because they didn't want to know. People didn't want to know about what's actually going on out there. We're all getting rich, Bill Wilson. Why don't you mind your own business? Bill said, "No, I'm going to go anyway." Okay. And so he went and he wrote these, he and his wife, and you can go online, you can Google it, you can find, in fact, Rob, see if you can find a picture, Google it for us and send of Bill and Lois on his motorcycle. Thank you, Rob, by the way. Thank you for everything that you do in the background there. You make it so much more of a multimedia experience, Rob. It's awesome. But anyway, you can go and Google, if you just Googled Bill Lois motorcycle, you'll find it right away. And that's what they did. And they roared off on this motorcycle, and people thought they were crazy. Okay, that's what a lunacy commission should be appointed. It means people thought they were crazy. They should be committed. But on the contrary, this idea was pivotal in Bill Wilson's life. And he is about to become very rich from doing this. And then he's going to lose it all, as we do. So, sorry, spoiler alert. Okay, for anyone who didn't know, that's all right. Back to you, Brad.
I had some success at speculation, so we had a little money, but we once worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing on our small capital. That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. We covered the whole eastern United States in a year. At the end of it, my reports to Wall Street procured me a position there and the use of a large expense account. The exercise of an option brought in more money, leaving us with a profit of several $1,000s for that year.
When he said, maybe some of you know this, maybe you don't. I didn't know when I was new. When he says the exercise of an option, just means that he sold some shares at a company and got a bunch of money from doing that. He bought low and he sold high and he made a bunch of money, exercising an option. That's what that means, okay?
For the next few years, fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. My judgment and ideas were followed by many to the tune of paper millions. The great boom of the late 20s was seething and swelling. Drink was taking an important and exhilarating part in my life. There was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. Everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. Scoffers could scoff and be damned. I made a host of fair weather friends.
All right. If anyone's heard of the Roaring 20s, anyone's seen The Great Gatsby and so on and so forth, just picture that. That's what Bill Wilson is. He's living the life right now. Okay. He has arrived. Okay. And a lot of us, I think, you know, at least entertained at some period in our life where we're on top of it, man. Okay. When the booze is working and it hasn't become a problem yet, we're still on top of it, man. We think we got the game beat. Okay. What happens, as he said, that boomerang, man, it hasn't boomeranged yet. You know what I'm saying? That boomerang has not turned back around yet. And we'll see where we're at in a couple pages from now.
My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. The remonstrances of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. There were many unhappy scenes in our sumptuous apartment. There had been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife, helped at times by extreme drunkenness, kept me out of those scrapes.
You know, some of this language, man, like early on, like really, as I said, it really frustrated me. So this line, the remonstrances of my friends terminated in a row and I became a lone wolf. I would read things like that and I would just become frustrated and think like, I have nothing in common with this guy. This Alcoholics Anonymous is not for me. Like this is it. I hate this book. Okay. When I read things that I don't understand, I get confused and I become angry. And that's how it was, man. Okay. But let me unpack this for you. And let's see if you identify with this. Remonstrances of his friends. His friends said to him, Bill, you're drinking too much, man. You're kind of a donkey. Okay. You're kind of a bozo when you drink and we can't be around you. Okay. Anybody here identify, had any of their friends ever say something like that to them? I know I did, man. Okay. That terminated in a row. Well, what does that mean? It means Bill Wilson said, why don't you get screwed and mind your own business? Okay. He got angry at them for trying to change him and his drinking. You identify with that? They tried to change his drinking and he said, why don't you get screwed? And he became a lone wolf, which means he started drinking by himself because it was better than drinking around other people who were going to judge his drinking. Okay. When I look at it that way, I absolutely identify with Bill Wilson. Okay. People were always trying to judge my drinking. I always got angry at them for doing it. And ultimately I ended up drinking by myself. The remonstrances of my friends terminated in many rows. And I definitely became a lone wolf. Okay. More like a lone weasel, really. But anyway. Okay. Back to you, Brad. That got some laughs. That got some laughs.
In 1929, I contracted golf fever. We went at once to the country, my wife to applaud while I started out to overtake Walter Hagen. Liquor caught up to me much faster than I came up behind Walter.
All right, Walter Hagen, just think Tiger Woods, just think Bubba Watson, just think Rory McIlroy. Okay, that's what he's saying. And you know what I love about this too? I read this for years and I you know, I never really understood. I never really stopped to pay attention. Like as an alcoholic, I don't know about you guys, but I don't do anything a little bit. I don't do anything average. I either have to be the best in the world or screw it. I quit. Okay. And look at Bill Wilson. He can't just become an average golfer. He doesn't want to just go and enjoy a leisurely game of golf. If he's going to go golfing, he's going to beat Walter Hagen. That's how I am, man. Okay, either that or I quit, which is how I am with golf. I just won't do it, man. I don't golf. I will not golf. You couldn't pay me $100,000 to go play around a golf, man, because nobody has a good time when I golf. I am terrible at golf, and so I won't do it. I just won't do it. I'm afraid my sponsor is going to make me start for the humility. But anyway, that's a story for another time. I just think that's funny. Bill Wilson here, he can't just become an average golfer and enjoy a couple of days of golf. If he's going to golf, he's got to go beat Walter Hagen. You guys know what I mean by that? That's how I am, man. That's for sure. All right, back to you, Brad.
I began to be jittery in the morning. Golf permitted drinking every day and every night. It was fun to caroom around the exclusive course, which had inspired such awe in me as a lad. I acquired the impeccable coat of tan one sees upon the well-to-do. The local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism. Abruptly in October 1929, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange.
All right, guys, here's a little bit of a history lesson. I'm sure most of you guys are aware of this, and if you're not, I'll just fill in the blanks. We've all heard about the great stock market crash and the Great Depression in the 1930s and so on. So here's Bill Wilson, roaring 20s, multimillionaire, making all this money, and now everything is about to collapse. The world economy is about to collapse, first of all, and Bill Wilson is going to be torn to shreds here in a few moments.
After one of those days of inferno, I wobbled from a hotel bar to a brokerage office. It was 8 o'clock, 5 hours after the market closed. The ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of the tape, which bore the inscription XYZ32. It had been 52 that morning. I was finished, and so were many friends. The papers reported men jumping to death from the towers of high finance. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar.
So what I think is interesting about that, we're going to see another scenario where here, you know, a lot of these men, I mean, this really happened. Guys just jumped, man. They lost millions of dollars overnight, instantaneously during the stock market crash. And the emotional conflict that they felt as a result of that was too much for them to bear. And they jumped, they committed suicide. Bill Wilson doesn't have to commit suicide, but what does he have to do? He has to drink. Okay. I know a friend of mine, Adam, who if one of his sponsees drank, he feels he says to them, you know, I'm relieved that you took a drink and that you didn't commit suicide, because that's how we are. Okay, he doesn't have to commit suicide because he has an alternate solution, and that is to go drink. And it's hard for us to understand as alcoholics. What happens to me at an emotional, mental level does not happen for average drinkers. Okay, it has a profound impact on the well-being of an alcoholic for me to take a drink. Okay, and the immense positive soothing power of drinking is something that these other men didn't have available to him. Bill Wilson didn't have to commit suicide, but he did have to go to the bar.
My friends had dropped several million since 10 o'clock. So what? Tomorrow was another day. As I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. Next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. He had plenty of money left and thought I'd better go to Canada. By the following spring, we were living in our accustomed style. I felt like Napoleon returning from Elba. No St. Helena for me. But drinking caught up with me again, and my generous friend had to let me go. This time we stayed broke. We went to live with my wife's parents. I found a job, then lost it as the result of a brawl with a taxi driver.
All right, so we see Bill Wilson is he's falling to pieces right now. Okay, first of all, moving in with your wife's parents is probably never a sign of great success in one's life. Okay, number one, and number, due respect if anybody has had to do that, and God knows, you know, I remember saying to my parents, Mom, you know, my worst nightmare in life is having to move back into your basement. She said, Kevin, we want you to know our worst nightmare is you having to move back into our basement, you know. Anyway, so I get it, man. And now he's in a brawl with a taxi driver. You know, he's really starting to lose it here. Okay. And let's remember, not even a page ago, he had arrived. He had arrived. Okay. The transformation in Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't have to take long. My sponsor says that to me all the time. Coming to AA and getting well, we can get well very quickly. It doesn't take long. It also doesn't take long to go the other way, does it? Does not take long once I start drinking for me to fall to absolute pieces. Okay. So it goes both ways. Back to you, Brad.
Mercifully, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years or hardly draw a sober breath. My wife began to work in a department store, coming home exhausted to find me drunk. I became an unwelcome hanger on at brokerage places. Liquor ceased to be a luxury, it became a necessity. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day, and often 3, got to be routine.
All right, so a couple things here that I like to point out. Number one, has anybody here ever felt like when you were drinking and using, that you would become an unwelcome hanger on? I know I did, man. I know I did for sure. I'd become an absolute mooch, and I was just a leech off people, man. I was for sure an unwelcome hanger on in a lot of places. And now he's talking about bathtub gin. Bathtub gin, from a historical standpoint, is just gin that was literally made in bathtub. It was bootleg gin. This is prohibition in the United States. I think it was from 1910. It ended in 1933, though. So you got to think Bill Wilson's doing all this drinking during prohibition. Think about that. Okay. And so there's bootleggers. Yeah, 20 to 33. Thanks, Rob. At this point, he doesn't get sober until December 1934. At this point, he's drinking bathtub gin, which is just gin made by bootleggers. Okay. I'm sure I would have liked it.
Sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s, and I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens. This went on endlessly, and I began to waken very early in the morning, shaking violently. A tumbler full of gin, followed by half a dozen bottles of beer, would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation, and there were periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hope.
Okay, so I just want to say, guys, we're right at 7 o'clock here. So I don't want to stop. I want to keep pushing through until we get to that magical moment that Ebby Thatcher enters the picture here. So we're going to keep going. We'll probably be like another 15 minutes. I spent quite a bit of time at the front of this doing some reviews, so I appreciate that. But I will say it's 7 p.m. If anybody needs to drop off the call, please feel free to do so. I will not have hurt feelings. If I do, I'll talk to my sponsor. I promise. Okay. But just know we're probably going to go another 15 minutes or so. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Gradually, things got worse. The house was taken over by the mortgage holder. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father-in-law became ill. Then I got a promising business opportunity, the low point of 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and the chance vanished. I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink. I was through forever. Before then, I had written lots of sweet promises, but my wife happily observed that this time I meant business. And so I did.
Oh, okay, so where are we right now? On the cycle. On the cycle, where are we? Here, I'll share it for a moment. Okay, what we just heard is Bill Wilson's firm resolution. That's it. I'm done. I'm through. I'm never going to drink again. Did you guys hear that? Okay. Brad, what's the next line?
Shortly afterwards, I came home drunk.
Oh.
Imagine that. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to mind. Someone just pushed a drink my way and I had taken it. Was I crazy? I began to wonder, for such an appalling lack of perspective seemed near being just that.
Okay, so Bill Wilson doesn't explain a lot about his restlessness, irritability, and discontent during this time, but we can imagine, okay, he's broke, he's ruined another business opportunity, he's living with his wife's parents, he's living in a bad deal, man, okay? And here we see, was I crazy? The insanity of alcoholism, the mental obsession. Bill calls it an appalling lack of perspective. Okay, an inability to distinguish the true from the false. An appalling lack of perspective is what he calls it. So he renews his resolve and he tried again. He swears off again.
Renewing my resolve, I tried again. Some time passed and confidence began to be replaced by cocksureness. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. One day I walked into a cafe to telephone. In no time I was beating on the bar asking myself how it happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I had managed better next time, but I might as well get good and drunk then. And I did.
Man, do I identify with that. That's exactly the way that I drank. How did this happen again? How could this have happened again? How did I let this happen again? Goes into a bar, has an insane thought, picks up the drink, triggers the allergy, and he's gone. Baffled and drunk.
The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. The courage to do battle was not there. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. I hardly dared cross the street lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it was scarcely daylight. An all-night place supplied me with a dozen glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were stilled at last. A morning paper told me the market had gone to hell again. Well, so had I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. Should I kill myself? No, not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that, so 2 bottles and oblivion. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms, for mine endured this agony 2 more years. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when the morning terror and madness were on me. Again I swayed dizzily before an open window as the medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself for a weakling. There were flights from city to country and back as my wife and I sought escape. Then came the night with the physical and mental torture was so hellish I feared I would burst through the windows, sash and all. Somehow I managed to drag my mattress to a lower floor, lest I suddenly leap. A doctor came with a heavy sedative. Next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. People feared for my sanity, so did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking, and I was 40 pounds underweight.
Okay, so we see here again, just like in the guys jumping from towers of high finance, Bill Wilson could go to the bar and didn't have to, could drink and didn't have to commit suicide. We see the same thing here, okay? Drinking as a means of overcoming this brutal self-hatred, self-loathing, self-disgust that we all know very well, the mental and physical torture that he was experiencing. But he could drink as a means of, and it's a funny thing, man, because the very thing that I was drinking as my only solution had also become my biggest problem. And that is the baffling feature of alcoholism. Guys, let me ask you this question. And this is why, you know, alcoholism is such a merciless obsession. Bill calls it a rapacious creditor, which is a greedy creditor. Guys, every time I go through this cycle, okay, I go through this spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again, what happens to my spiritual malady, to that spiritual sickness? Every time I go through this and hurt everyone I've ever loved and destroyed everything I ever cared about again, emerging filled with guilt, shame, and remorse, terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. What happens to my spiritual condition? Does it get better or does it get worse? It gets worse every time I go through this cycle. And when it gets worse, my need for a drink becomes even greater. I remember Deb, who's on the call here, there she is. Deb had asked me to go speak at an Al-Anon meeting one time, and I'll never forget, Deb, I talk about this a lot, that I talked to a mother at that Al-Anon meeting who asked, Kevin, does my daughter know how much she's hurting me when she does these things? And that's a good question. I had to think about that. And I had to think about my parents. And I had to think about, did I know how much I was hurting them when I was drinking, when I was doing these things? And the answer is, yeah, I knew. But this is the difference between heavy drinkers and real alcoholics. A real alcoholic, the fact that I knew I was hurting them did not make me want to get sober. It made me want to get drunk more than anything to take away that pain. Every time I go through that cycle and I'm in that period of restlessness, irritability, and discontent and that spiritual sickness, it makes me want to drink more than anything. And I know you guys all understand. I can see you nodding. Okay, everyone here understands that, man. The pain and the self-hatred and the self-loathing that I created in my life as a result of drinking just made me want to drink more, not less. That is the terrible, merciless obsession of alcoholism, okay, and this alcoholic disease. Okay, Brad. So on that light, on that light note, back to you, Brad.
My brother-in-law is a physician, and through his kindness and that of my mother, I was placed in a nationally known hospital for the mental and physical rehabilitation of alcoholics.
Okay, so who is Bill Wilson meeting right now? I'll give you a hint. We talked about him. We just read a chapter by him. Somebody tell me. Somebody unmute yourselves. Tell me. Who did Bill Wilson just meet?
Dr. Silkworth.
Dr. Silkworth. Okay, the doctor's opinion. He just met Silky. Okay, was their nickname for him. The little doctor who loved drunks. One of the greatest friends, non-alcoholic friends that Alcoholics Anonymous has ever had. Maybe the greatest non-alcoholic friend that we've ever had. Bill Wilson was just admitted for the first time into the Towns Hospital in New York City, and he began working with Dr. Silkworth. This would be in, I believe it was April of 1934.
Under the so-called belladonna treatment, my brain cleared. Hydrotherapy and mild exercise helped much. Best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally. Dr.
Silkworth telling Bill Wilson about the physical allergy and the mental obsession. Okay, this is the real deal, man. This is the straight goods. Dr. Silkworth telling Bill physical allergy, mental obsession.
It relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics, the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. Understanding myself now, I fared forth in high hope. For 3 or 4 months, the goose hung high. I went to town regularly and even made a little money. Surely this was the answer, self-knowledge.
All right, guys, let me fill in a blank here for you. And this is super important because I have a lot of people that come to this big book study and they learn that cycle. Okay, they learn this cycle and they think that they have discovered an answer. And they see this and they're like, my God, that's me. That's exactly my problem. And they think that they have discovered an answer. And guys, I'm here to tell you, that is not an answer. That is nothing more than a problem. And Bill Wilson has been to the Towns Hospital now, and he's met Dr. Silkworth, and he has learned the physical allergy, and he has learned the mental obsession. And is he able to stay sober? Absolutely not, because he has not been given an answer. He has been given nothing more than self-knowledge. When Bill talks about self-knowledge, what he means is we came to AA and we learned that cycle. Learning that cycle is just the problem, brothers and sisters. Bill Wilson does not have the answer yet. He does not know about the spiritual solution or the program of action. Not yet. That is going to happen in about 1 page. Right now, all he knows is that cycle, and he's gotten that from Dr. Silkworth.
But it was not, for the frightful day came when I drank once more. The curve of my declining moral and bodily health fell off like a ski jump. After a time, I returned to the hospital. This was the finish, the curtain, it seemed to me. My weary and desperate and despairing wife was informed that it would all end with heart failure during delirium tremens, or I would develop a wet brain, perhaps within a year. She would soon have to give me over to the undertaker or the asylum. They did not need to tell me. I knew and almost welcomed the idea. It was a devastating blow to my pride. I, who had thought so well of myself and my abilities, of my capacity to surmount obstacles, was cornered at last. Now I was to plunge into the dark, joining that endless procession of sots who had gone on before. I thought of my poor wife. There had been much happiness after all. What would I not give to make amends? But that was over now. No words can tell you of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master.
Now, some people will say that is where Bill Wilson takes step 1. Okay, it has been said. I'm not sure that I fully agree with that. Bill Wilson continues to drink for quite some time after this, but a lot of people will say that's where Bill Wilson surrenders to his problem. That he had met his match, he has been overwhelmed, that alcohol was my master. So if you like, you can put Bill Wilson step 1 there. And we're going to read this next paragraph, and then we're going to finish up we'll close the meeting, and then we have a tradition here that I love. It's my favorite time. We're going to go around the room and everyone can just introduce yourselves, say a quick hello, and let us know where you're calling in from, okay? So don't run away.
Trembling, I stepped from the hospital a broken man. Fear sobered me for a bit. Then came the insidious insanity of that first drink, and on Armistice Day 1934, I was off again. Everyone became resigned to the certainty that I would have to be shut up somewhere or would stumble along to a miserable end. How dark it was before the dawn. In reality, that was the beginning of my last debacle. I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes.
Fourth dimension, baby. And what an apropos time for us to adjourn for this evening. So one of the things I always like to point out too, just because I'm kind of a nerd like this, like Bill starts drinking November 11th, right? And I'm thinking what he probably, you know, if you think about it, he had probably seen some horrific stuff when he fought in the war. And it's Remembrance Day, Armistice Day. He was probably thinking about the war, probably using that as a justification to have a couple drinks, because don't you know what I went through? Oh my God, it was so bad. I mean, I know how I think, and I know how we are, man. Okay. And he probably used that as an excuse to go get drunk again. The next thing that's going to happen though, is that an old schoolhood friend of his by the name of Ebby Thatcher is going to show up, and he's going to give Bill the keys to the kingdom. And in that moment, Bill Wilson will become the first man in the history of the world to have access to all three pieces of information that I need to have to get sober in AA. He will know what the problem is that he gets from Dr. Silkworth, and he will know about the solution and the program of action that he's going to get from Ebby Thatcher that came to him through the Oxford group. And not to be missed, tune in next week for the exciting conclusion of our story. All right, love you lots, guys. Let's close the meeting.